because, I'm sorry, Peter, Dr. Goodwin.
Perhaps I could just add a little perspective, because all of this is about public safety first and foremost. The 55 inches, with the discussions we had internally, you'll notice that's at the Golden Gate Bridge. So as you move up through the delta, the effect of the 55 inches is going to become less and less. So once you're up and out of the tidally influenced zone, then it's going to be much, much less than that 55 inches. We know this is coming. It's not a matter of 100 years, 50 years. We really don't know that. But at some point, if there's a major development going in, they're going to face these kinds of challenges. And when we were also discussing this, there was a very interesting exchange 2 or 3 meetings ago with the council members about when you were looking on the map and what happens if there was a major disaster, where could people go to be safe? So if one of these developments went in and it was up to this standard, you would know that there would be some places in these vast flat areas which would actually be safety. It would give a place for people to go. So by setting this standard, the 55 inches, if you were a developer and you didn't want to go to that initial analysis, and if the new DWR maps were not out, 55 inches is what you go with. If you do more hydrodynamic analysis, it might be a lot less than that, 18 inches or something like that. So that's reducing the burden or giving a choice to the developer. The second thing is just what would the landscape look like in terms of safety if the major disaster happened? So does that capture in a little more depth than the discussion?
Yeah. Could I just understand that, Mr. Chair, then? So you said you have to do some other hydrodynamic analysis, but is there a way to have a general plotting of what that would be if you were, say in the western delta versus the south delta? It might be, island specific depending upon some.
I think the easy way to do that would be to adjust for the base elevation of the property initially.
Okay, what's that mean in layman's terms?
Well, if the property was above sea level, you would start shaving off the bottom of the 55 inches to account for the elevation of the property.
But what I heard Peter say is that the water there's not going to be 55 inches of additional water on the other side of the levee when you push it further upstream, right? Is that what I get at?
Well, it depends. If you're right down and you're looking at 55 inches, and then what you're looking at is the flood wave coming down on top of a higher base level. So actually there was a whiteboard here. So the worst possible scenario for the increase in flood elevation is going to be 55 inches under this recommendation. As you move up to higher elevations, you get like an exponential reduction in depth. And so there will be a point eventually when you get up into the rivers where the effect of sea level rise is really having no impact at all.
Well, and maybe that goes to my point earlier that if you got a base elevation in Cortland, for example, is 18, is it additive 55 inches, or is it just another? Is it 6 inches because you're that far up the river, or City of Sacramento? I mean, I don't know. You got a floodplain that's been established.
That's a choice. There are more detailed analyses being conducted by DWR that's going to give a lot of insight. But in that interim, until those maps come out, there would be 2 choices. You could go with the 55 inches and not deal with any additional analysis. Or you could have a hydraulic engineer, a flood engineer, take a look at it and make that assessment for you.
Randy.
Dr. Goodwin, are you saying that sea level at the Golden Gate Bridge is different than sea level at Walnut Grove?
No, not with sea level rise. What we're saying is that it's not sea level rise we're looking at here, it's flood elevation. So when that flood comes down through the delta today, it's hitting an elevation in the bay that's perhaps down here. Under sea level rise, the flood elevation will be meeting an elevation in the bay that's much higher. So that if your base level is down here, the river's coming down at an angle like this. You have a certain flood elevation. With sea level rise, suddenly it's meeting an elevation up here, so that flood water elevation in the river and through the delta is going to be at a higher elevation. But it's not 55 inches right up here. It's only in that area that's influenced in the tidal area and by the elevation in the bay.
let me think about this one overnight, and then we'll talk about it tomorrow.
Sure. Be happy to do that.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea.
Yeah, I think that is probably a good idea. I guess I'm open on either, but I'm not open on the notion that we would be silent on the question of how to increase the level of flood protection by flood proofing. That seems to me, I understand the politics of everything, and that's why we have nothing but highly constrained rivers, deeper channels, higher velocity water, and all kinds of serious threats from flooding, because everybody prefers a solution that somebody else will pay for that doesn't encroach on any activity. But I go back, it was almost at the time, Dr. Goodwin, at that meeting, the New York Times had that wonderful long story of the approach used in the Netherlands for agricultural operations, surrounded by massive flood and surge barrier gates. And they eventually put the home, I think the barn, some of the activities almost 20 feet up in the air, or the equivalent. Now, that, of course, would be viewed as extreme and radical, I suppose, but they were providing financial assistance to do it. And, of course, I think the reaction depended on the people who said, well, wait a minute, I can't afford the 10% match or whatever it is. But, after a while, if you don't say that, how do we meet our statutory obligation to reduce risk? Simultaneously, we are legally obligated not to expose the state to existing financial liability, and the failure to come in and talk turkey on flood protection does create a jeopardy to the state. So, I'm like Don. I'm a little uncertain whether 200 years, which is at least statute, and you've got that around, or 55 inches, although modified by the hydrology of floodwaters, is the right thing to go. You want to put it over till tomorrow, Don?
I'm fine. Yeah. Again, I
Let's
thought a lot about this as they briefed me on this and read through it, and again, I understand how you got there, and there's another path, but maybe a little more information, between now and tomorrow. And again, we've still got between now and May, but we obviously get some direction on this.
Okay. Members, without objection, let's put RRP2 over till tomorrow. And that's, Ms. Terry, I know you